Welcome back to Master for Montreal Online. This is our last round of the day. Sadly for some, and I'm sure happily for some of the players, because my lord, has this been a tough, grueling day of Hearthstone for them. But a few select players have managed to make their way right up to the top. Two players already guaranteed with Lightning and Lambie series at 8-0 at the end of the 8th round. But the players who are really trying to get that one last win to get through players here on 6-2 so far. Swids and Kevin here, both on the brink of getting through to the top 8, but it does look like Swids is in with slightly more of a chance.
It does, yeah. He's currently sat 14th in the standings, which suggests his tiebreakers will be kind of on the bubble, depending on what happens at the end of this. Kevin is a little bit lower down. He's somewhere in the 40s right now, as there are a lot of 6 and 2s at this point. So I would imagine his tiebreakers cannot really improve enough at this point to be able to snatch that last spot in the top 8. But still, pushing towards a 7-2 record, I think that is a big goal for a lot of players who make it through to day 2. Is top 8 or not, if they finish 7-2, that does mean an awful lot for them in terms of extra invites, extra prize money, standings overall, because you don't just have to win every event to end up as a GM qualifier, especially in some of the other regions outside of Europe. Just consistently picking up prize money here and there can end up being enough for you.
That's right. I've been talking to a lot of the players who have gone 7-2, who maybe aren't at the the highest tier of play that we have in Hearthstone, and just having the security of not having to hit the ladder finishes or grind the open cups is a pretty big deal for them. They get to go back to enjoying Hearthstone rather than it being a constant fear factor of whether or not they'll make it there, and instead get to play for fun instead and practice these Master Tours. But Swids is a player who I know has been grinding very, very hard at the moment, because I believe I matched into him on ladder at 3 in the morning the day before the tournament, which I guess would be 4 o'clock for him. And then I know that my friend matched into him at 10 in the morning the day after. So he's clearly not been sleeping much and has been grinding an awful lot of Hearthstone on ladder to get to this point. And clearly the work is showing magnificent.
It is, yeah, and Raven and myself have really talked about how he seems much improved. Just honestly, just seems kind of happier in his own skin in terms of playing on stream and being a GM and, all the extra stuff that comes along with that. It seems a lot more comfortable with it this time around. He seems happier and more content when he's on camera. And seems to be playing better because of it as well. So I do think he's certainly growing into the role of being a Grandmaster in Europe. And it's great to see him here having a good showing in a Masters Tour as well.
Indeed. Also great to see Kevin, a player who we don't know all too much about, other than it's just kind of funny that his name is purely Kevin as his battle tag. But he's a player who's been doing pretty well in the last few Masters Tour events. Lorinda, our statistician, has been saying he's got a record of 7-5 and then 5-4, 5-4, 5-4. So positive at all of his Masters Tours, and now 6-2. Like we say, even if he's not in contention to get through to the top 8, it's the kind of streak that allows you to have a much easier time of getting into GM in the last tour stop of the year in Madrid.
Yeah, it sounds like he has the sort of record where he should have at least been somewhat on my radar, but no, I will confess that I don't know Kev.
You got there first. I was trying to get there. Oh, well done. You win this round, Stoffel. You win.
Come on, low-hanging fruit jokes. Come on, you gotta get out of bed real early in the morning to get there first when you're casting with me, Derek.
Yeah, you're right there. You're right there. But starting things off with the secret rogue, as we saw from both of these players, fairly standard stuff. Just kind of the level 1 strategy of banning the bomb warrior and going for proceeding from there with your relatively standard decks.
Yeah.
And up against the Highlander priest here, Evan. He's got himself a decent start and a kind of close matchup. It can get pretty interesting this week.
It certainly can, yeah, but these big threats in the opening hand are certainly going to give Kevin a lot of hope moving forward. Shotbot to curve out with as well is pretty nice here, although we might potentially still see dirty tricks depending on what the play is from Swids, because it's a hand that does want some resources, and now the options have got even more complicated for Kevin already.
Cold Neophyte is such an interesting card in the matchup, because a lot of the time with this card you're thinking, how do I shut down multiple spells being played on the same turn against Rogue or Mage? But it's also very powerful against Priest in shutting down one big spell. If you can stop Soul Mirror as a big one, for example, Plague of Death once the late game comes. But at the same time, is he really going to get to that point if he's not playing out his minions on curve here? intuition is to say that this should just be shot bot played out on curve here to keep up with the tempo, because the chances of your opponent playing a spell are not especially high on turn 3.
Yeah, I like it, I believe, just perusing the list for Swids. And since it is the Highlander variation, there are a few more options that maybe could have come down there, but nothing super impactful, especially with the Dormant Minion not yet awoken for Apotheosis to actually have an impact.
Interesting selection here. My first instinct is just to say Dirty Tricks to get yourself some extra value, but this is the kind of hand that with a surprise coin Shadow Priest to catch your opponent off guard, maybe they slip up and allow you to take Hanar or even the Shotbot.
Alright. I do kind of like that argument, but I do, just philosophically, I always sit in this world where, like, if Priest gets to draw cards, you're probably screwed. That's true in so many matchups, right? Where, like, they have every resource in their deck that they need to achieve basically everything and to beat basically any deck in the game. The big weakness is that it just takes them so long to draw through all that value. So I have a really hard time turning down card draw as Priest.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think it's probably the correct way to go, because this hand is not doing it at the moment. It needs a little bit more oomph, or more importantly, some immediate removal, because I think on average you're definitely expecting one of the big threats to come down in the next 1 or 2 turns.
Right. I think from Kevin's side, just in terms of that cadence of his threats, I think he might want to wait until the Vile Fiend pops and then hopefully deal with it while playing one of his big threats in the same turn, just for a big tempo swing.
Interesting.
I wonder.
You liking just going for the 6/6 Edwin now?
I'm definitely thinking about it. I was kind of thinking about getting the questing down, but I guess at that point it's pretty likely that it dies to, you know, Penance or any kind of cheap damage removal spell. So going for the Edwin is a slightly more likely threat to stick. Does make sense to me here.
Yeah, I think if you're going to go for the one of them, it kind of has to be the Edwin here. I think the questing is just a little bit too fragile with the Vile Fiend coming out on the other side. But for some reason, I was completely blanking on the ability to backstab that turn as well, which turned it into an 8/8, which is a very, very big deal indeed, and a huge difference because it suddenly plays around Penance, for example, as well as any number of other things that will be able to take it out.
Yeah, the big thing for me is just that I think you want to get moving with this hand as Rogue. You don't want to be leaving your threats for the maximum value, because it doesn't matter how big it is. Once turn 7 knocks around, it's dying to Soul Mirror, it's dying to Galakrond. Let's get hitting them nice and quick.
That's fair. So obviously Kevin knows what the deal is with this secret. He knows it's only come from one place, and that was his hand, so he knows it's the Dirty Tricks. So he should feel pretty comfortable here, I would say, just developing more minions and continuing to smash the face with this giant 8/8.
No bigger buffs coming down once turn 5 knocks around, so I'm on board. Obviously needs to be considering at this point Wave of Apathy plus Cabal Acolyte. So going wide with minions as much as possible is definitely something to consider. You want at least one other minion on the board here, which he has access to more than that. So I think you're not even afraid of that at this point. It's just a clean play from Kevin.
Right. Apotheosis is now picked up. Yeah, even with Cabal Acolyte Wave, what the best Swids could have done is trade into one of the minions on the left, and then I guess there's one amazing target, one pretty damn good one, I will say, with the Ancestral Guardian. It will give him at least some sort of survivability. But and again, it's not the world.
Right, and the interesting thing for me here again is the added layer that we now have between the decision of Coin and Dirty Tricks, because Swids didn't know that it was the only secret in Kevin's hand. So he didn't know that Kevin would know that it's 100% Dirty Tricks. But because Kevin does know that, he is able to stop it from activating, which makes the coin that little bit more tempting as well, in order to get Cabal Acolyte plus Wave on the same turn. Or Cabal Shadow Priest, sorry, on the same turn as Wave.
I would, still argue that at some point, you're resilient enough as Priest. I don't think Kevin can just play this game and say, okay, I'm never playing Backstab, I'm never playing Eviscerate, I'm never playing my own Dirty Tricks Blackjack Stunner. Like, it's not happening, right? At some point, Kevin is going to have to rely on spells, because I think this deck does rely on a lot of powerful spells, right? Like Secret Passage, Shadow Step, all of that kind of stuff is very integral to the way the deck plays. I think you're seeing here, Swid's already forcing a position where Kevin has to react in some way, and those two cards are probably getting drawn this turn.
And my first thought process is definitely to go with the questing here, because we're going into turn 6, which is not an especially impactful turn for the Priest. And then heading into turn 7, if you are afraid of the Soul Mirror, you've got the Cold Neophyte to follow up to deny that for another turn, and again, get that damage through. So I really like making just a small questing here, because its ability to grow is very, very large.
And having just seen the wave of apathy, Kevin decides he can trade off the small minions here. He doesn't really need those buffers anymore.
Good point. Oh, that stings.
It does. The Penance pickup is still pretty huge, though.
Yeah, Penance, and you've got to imagine Raised Dead here just to find anything to throw down alongside this. Anything impactful, rather.
I mean, problem is he just gets a Vile Fiend most of the time, though, right? Which looks incredibly slow in this kind of scenario. And like Madame Lazul alongside that. More dirty tricks at this point. Is that really going to get him anywhere?
I'd rather do that than pass. I agree it's not great, but this is what we're spending our mana on, I think.
Okay. One Maker is probably the good outcome here.
That's pretty good. Yeah. Spend your mana. Ooh. Okay. Not necessarily the easiest kill there. It does mean that he's tanking 8 on the following turn.
Yeah, there's a good chance he tanked at least 5 or 6 anyway, right? And potentially even 8 on the following turn if Secret Passage or anything else were to come down. But crucially, the health grows on the questing as well, right? Whereas the Edwin is just an 8/3 at this point, so he could realistically deal with it with Siamat on the following turn or any other number of ways. Generate Holy Smite from Cobalt Spellkin, like all of these different things that could potentially clear it up. Whereas if the questing gets too big, his hand just doesn't interact with it right now.
I mean, I'm going to be honest, Subtle. I wasn't surprised because the play was bad. I was surprised because my 8th brain didn't see it as even a possibility. I was just saying, you have to kill the Edwin here, or you will die. I think it's very clever.
Yeah.
And I think what else is clever is that Kevin saved the Cult Neophyte specifically heading into turn 7, and just because Hearthstone's nice to us sometimes, it illustrates it perfectly, with Soul Mirror off the top being very, very difficult for this board to be answered now for Swids.
Yeah, I mean, the Siamat is still potentially pretty strong here, right? Wind Fury Rush even, be able to take care of the 2 minions, just isolate perhaps the Ancestral Guardian on the board. He's going Divine Shield, though. Fair enough.
You do know that your opponent is going to get a Siamat almost 100% of the time. It's possible, I suppose, that is ambush and dirty tricks.
Yes.
But I think you have to play into the idea that it's very possible that they get Siamat and then just trade back on the following turn.
That's true. You do, I mean, you certainly know one of those secrets was dirty tricks. The other one is ambush 1/3 of the time and plagiarize 2/3 of the time with the build that Kevin has right now.
Interesting game. But Kevin, despite having full mana utilization from the Siamat on that turn, is definitely looking like the next few turns are going to be miserable unless something big comes down.
Sorry, this is just a very funny mind vision that Swids is tempting himself to go for. Yep, it's happening.
Needs that passage.
He absolutely does, yeah. Secret Passage as the pickup on the next turn might just about give him the gas that he needs to stay in this game. Otherwise, it's looking like a pretty straightforward romp from here for Swids.
Yeah, you can go in with the prep here, which I guess is probably worth it. It does, of course, come at the downside of not allowing you to go Spellkin Cabal Acolyte with prep wave thrown in there, which is somewhat of a consideration for the following turn.
Yeah.
But keeping one of your minions alive versus Dagger, I guess is probably worth slightly more. But it's close.
It's not it, is it?
It's a clear, and it sticks him a questing on the board. You take it. It's the only thing you're going to get.
Yeah. Just have to hope you can ride this last questing all the way to the bank from here.
Hold on to the prep in case you get one thief. Other than that, you're just playing everything, I think.
Give me a quest.
Yeah, one prep, one of this, one plagiarize already makes it a 5-5. There's the potential to do the cutesy priest play where you stagger it one off, where you leave it as a 4-4 as opposed to a 5-5.
I mean, if you were going to do that, it's not to hold back the plagiarize.
No,
I think
to have played a card first and then played the questing up.
Exactly. Like, we can start to talk about Hanar off the top, but I think we're not even in that territory yet. We don't take the 1 out of 16 to have a slim chance, which isn't even that game-winning.
Oh, Shadow Druid.
Hey! That's a bingo.
Ace in hands immediately from Kevin. Worth thinking about, especially because like he's just so tunneled on that last minion at this point. I think so it's just his absolute last remaining threat. Like even Secret Passage off the top here, it's kind of hard for him to find enough value.
Again, he's got the time for the next maybe one turn to find Secret Passage. After that, it's all going to disappear, especially as with Elucia there. It's, I guess at the moment, not really what Swids is looking for, because his hand is significantly better at the moment, but just in case something goes wrong, he's got the backup there.
Okay.
One of the good draws.
He absolutely needs value lackeys here, though. Spell and Dragon does hit spell. Candle Breath.
Okay.
Candle's Breath this turn. Yeah, I like it.
With the prep.
Actually, I guess with the prep, active sprint was just already playable that turn.
I get the feeling maybe that was forgotten, because I think I would rather have an extra card than an extra mana on this turn.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly forgot it until I saw the discount in hand,
so did I.
Point fingers.
Straight up.
Alright. Suddenly value is appearing. Oh. Okay, Plague Proto Drake.
That's a big boy. Gonna have to wrestle back against a lot of tempo on this turn, though, because just on its own, Cabal Shadow Priest, insane play here. Cabal Acolyte Breath of the Infinite, insane play in its own right.
Significantly more of those two options, though.
Yeah.
But it is an interesting turn outside of that as to whether Swids feels threatened on value from this point, because he can continue to just play for max tempo here and just play a River Croc, which it looks like he is going to do. But that is currently the highest value card in his hand. But there's also the train of thought that maybe now that Kevin is actually starting to generate some value, Swids might be looking to actually set up an Elucia turn over the next few turns, in which case dumping some cards is a pretty good idea.
You're definitely getting there. Even if it's at the point where you play it at the end of your turn, just to give your opponent a weak turn that you know they can't answer your board with, is something that I often need to remember is an available play.
Oh.
Oi. Yikes.
I'm scared. I've seen the future, Derek. I know what's going to happen.
Trade. That's 2 minions on the other side of the board. Even just the Breath of the Infinite alone. You can maneuver it.
Yeah, Breath of the Infinite. Still going to get it done.
And here, with the pickup of Plague, you can't end your turn with Elucia. I guess he wouldn't have had mana anyway, but it's always something that you've got to consider. You don't want to do that.
I think that could happen, and it still would not be the worst Mindrender Elucia that I've seen.
Whew.
Finally.
So, ambush Blackjack Stunner first? Do you care about that Proto Drake? Clearly not.
Kevin says no. Hanar Train available, Jandis available, okay.
Big threats. Very big threats.
Okay.
There we go.
The unspeakable win condition has arrived, Derek.
It that must not be named.
Yes. It does have to be an absolute miracle box from here as well, though. Particularly because he only will have, what, 6 or 7 cards left after the remainder of this gets shuffled back into his deck?
Well, don't ask me why I think this, because there's no logic behind it. But I get the feeling that a man called Kevin is a man who has powerful boxes. You know what I mean?
You know what? I do.
Yeah,
know exactly
it
what you
doesn't
mean.
make sense, but it kind of does at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah, with only 6 cards remaining, this box has to do the business without really drawing cards here as well from Kevin. Suddenly he's just under threat of fatigue. Obviously there's the opportunity that you can draw a million cards and just make a board so oppressive that it just ends the game immediately, but Swids has a Plague of Death in his hand. But is he tempted to just rip it anytime in the near future? I don't think so, right? Not as long as he has that Plague Proto Drake currently in play.
So he knows that that one's not the illusion one, so the lapidary is obviously very easy to clear up. He of course needs to bear in mind that he wants to clear the Hanar as well as a fairly high priority. He may just leave the lapidary up and allow it to attack face on this turn. Again, damage is not really the biggest concern against Rogue. It's losing board control that you're afraid of.
Agreed. Okay.
Cool.
Someone contact Jambray immediately so he can explain what to do this game now. Just gonna leave up the 5/5 illusion, value killing the Hanar more. Yeah, I guess I'm kind of into it.
I like it a lot. There's cute plays you can make, right? With Sap.
Shut up, Darren. Pass the box. Oh, come on!
Yeah, I mean, in all seriousness, right, you don't want to do that until you've lost board, I think, is probably fair to say here, which, you know, he hasn't necessarily yet. He's got the Blackjack Stunner to clear off the Kaj with the 5/5 inside it.
Yeah.
Don't let the door hit you.
Yeah, this turn is objectively probably way too powerful to be risking it all on box. It's an extremely strong Hearthstone turn.
Choose soon.
Especially since he has his pick of the litter with this 5/5 illusion. And he picks face. Okay.
I mean, as long as it keeps going face, that's just a 5/5 right there. You don't need to worry about its health total.
Yeah. I mean, it's still a 5/1. I think Magma Rager doesn't see much play.
I mean, it's getting closer and closer to just being time to rip the Plague of Death, right?
It is. He could. So there's like the play the Pyro first, play Mind Render, and then rip something from your opponent's hand to activate it.
Okay.
Which does automatically clear up anything, and you know bare minimum their hand has Shadow Word Ruin in it, right? Because you gave it to them, so you know this never goes too badly wrong.
You just don't need to play it, though, right? Because the 5/5 obviously dies to the sweep of AoE.
Correct, yes.
I mean, Dirty Tricks could be bad for you here, obviously, because you're approaching fatigue. Oh, no, wait, that's the rogue that's approaching fatigue. So
exactly.
You do want Dirty Tricks.
But flip it, though, right? Like, what card do you want them to still have? You want them to still have a Shadow Word Ruin, which actually might do good things against you, or do you want them to have a completely unplayable Dirty Trick?
Yes, Sottle, my mind has been rendered. Correct.
It's fine. I'm here to save you now, Derek. Everything's safe. You don't have to understand Mind Render.
I love hosting. So let's go for Draconic Studies and pick the poopiest dragon that we can here.
Mm-hmm.
Oh no, wait! Deathwing, you discard their hand!
Indeed.
I learned the interaction! I've been here
You
before,
did.
Sottle!
I did. I'm
learning!
I see that the abuse I threw at you last turn as well. No! No!
What? This is just... Well, okay, so he doesn't get a 5/5 now, which he would get with the Deathwing, but... I guess the hand is so bad, but you don't get a 12/12.
Uh-huh.
That had to be Deathwing, right?
Life and hope
Yes.
of
Yes, it is.
fighting.
Okay. Oi, oi, oi.
Well, here we are now.
Doesn't matter,
Entertain us.
obviously.
Your wish is my suggestion.
Shadow Step!
That's a great start. I'm going to say that is a great start. It's now ruined, but it was a great start.
Ooh. Wrong!
Swids is a finger counter. I do this every time a puzzle box gets played against me. I do this exact same thing.
1, 2, 3, 4. I win! J'ai gagné! Woo!
Yeah. Oh, wow. You are an excellent narrator, Derek. Who knew?
Had to be good at something.
Certainly not Priest.
Quiet, you. Swids taking the win here. He, on the other hand, is very good at Priest. Bit of a weird ending from Kevin there. I think there was, again, probably a way to maximize his odds there a little bit more with the Deathwing line, discarding the hand that then gets swapped back to Swids on the backswing. But the salient point was, of course, Dragon Queen Alexstrasza as the next card. You slam that bad boy down and you start generating premium threats that the box just couldn't answer.
Yeah, the box tried its best. There was a gift of the Zephyrus at the very beginning, which, as you mentioned, there was the Shadow Step in hand, which could have caused some real shenanigans. But it still would have required him to survive the initial turn, because there was no real way that Zephyrus was digging him out of that, unless it also found like some lightning blooms off the puzzle box or something ridiculous that could make something happen. But it was a very clowny game towards the end, but I think there was a lot of pretty crucial decision points through the early game that might have actually made differences, and I think both of them navigated it pretty well up until a point.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do feel like Kevin may have just fallen apart a bit in the end game there when we got into a Lucia world.
It does kind of seem to be the case for a lot of our players, where they seem to understand the macro game plan very well, where, you know, they're knowing when to get their threats down, what to deny from their opponent. Like, it was very clear that Kevin knew exactly how to sequence his threats in the early game, to play around the Soul Mirror, to get everything down. And then, kind of similar to Ego Waffle's Turtle Mage gameplay the other day, at the end it all just seems to fall apart, with obviously slightly different circumstances along the way. But it does mean Kevin goes down 0-1, and Swids on the Survival Druid here, trying to get things done old school, with just some classic Druid action.
Yeah, and this is a very classic build, I would say. One Teacher's Pet and double Lake Thresher, I guess, is a bit more modern. People have generally tended more towards Lake Threshers as the animated Broomstick has joined the party. But one Survival of the Fittest, one exotic Mount Seller in terms of threats, everything else looking fairly standard indeed. Although there's kind of just one extra Bog Beam hanging around in the deck, which is looking a little bit unusual. Generally, it's like a double Mount Seller, double Bog Beam kind of list, or it's neither of the above in some situations. So there is a little bit of a hybridization going on with the Swids list here.
This does look like one of those lists where it feels like there's 34 cards in the list. Like, he's somehow got the Anubisath Defenders and the Mount Sellers and the Bog Beam and the double Wild Growth. I'm sure many players would argue about which way is the correct way to go, but that's, you know, kind of, there's many different ways to finish out the game as Druid. The core idea being you have the ramp, you get up to your big threats, and you push your opponent out of the game proactively. On the other side, though, for Kevin, with obviously Bomb Warrior banned out of the way, he's just got a pretty standard lineup on his own side there, with the Rogue, this Control Soul Demon Hunter, and his own Druid to try and take things back. It's looking like, obviously, with fairly standard decks on either side, I think Swid's at 1-0 up is pretty far in the lead just based purely on that.
It is certainly looking that way, yes, as there are a few little twists in Swid's lineup still to come. We did see in the initial lineup graphic on Swid's side, he is playing a single copy of Faceless Corruptor in his version of the Rogue deck that we just saw Kevin pilot. So this is something that he has become known for over the course of GM's kind of standard archetypes, but with a little Swid's twist on it. He's been playing bombs in Pain Warrior for the longest time, even when no one else was doing that. And when it was live wire lances and an Ankar, he was playing the Wrench Caliber instead the whole time. So it's something he has been known for, just putting together slightly different builds of the deck, and it's no different here with that Druid as we were discussing. It's like how I told you the story earlier of there was the week where he didn't have Anubisath defenders in his Druid. We were having this exact same discussion before we noticed it. Like, wait, this Druid deck is playing 34 cards. Like, what's going on? What has he forgotten to put in? Turns out on that occasion, he had literally just forgotten to put Anubisath defenders.
He was just being a bit, how you say, stupid on that occasion.
You say, stupid? Yes.
Indeed. But a bit of an unfortunate queue order here for Kevin. Again, not even going into it. I know the discussion's been there on Twitter, but I'm not going into the queue order discussion here. It didn't work out, though, because Demon Hunter against Druid, I do feel like it's probably the worst matchup for Demon Hunter that you're facing against at the moment, in my experience.
Yeah, I think particularly this build as well. One Teacher's Pet, okay, sure, that might work a little bit in the Demon Hunter's favor, but when you're playing this version of Druid, you have access to 2 Iron Barks, 1 Teacher's Pet, any Taunt Beasts you summon from your exotic Mount Seller, 2 Anubisath defenders that can be made huge by your Survival of the Fittest. Like, you just don't get to hit face ever with Demon Hunter against this deck a lot of the time if they start rolling. Your big hope as the Demon Hunter is your big hope as with just about any deck up against Druid, and that's that they miss the ramp in the early game and they never actually get to activate any of that powerful stuff, and you're able to just go a little bit quicker than they do.
However, Swids is not rolling with this starting hand. This is looking pretty grim for him at the start, which means Kevin has to figure out, how do I capitalize on that best? Is it Tempo Panthara there to start getting some chip damage in before those taunts come down? It doesn't fit the curve perfectly because he obviously would like to go Hero Power Panthara into coin 5 drops, but it does, it does mean he's missing out on a 2-3 on board that can get swinging here.
Ding!
Okay, that's a bit better.
Yeah.
Good job, Swids.
Now he has Twilight Runner and Rush on the following turn if he wants to guarantee some card draw, potentially play around a big Blade Dance, which is still very possible even this early in the game, with Twin Slices thrown in there as well to be able to deal with it. Ooh.
Yeah.
Ooh, now there's choices.
I still think you're going for the for the Twilight Runner here, right? It's just whether or not you throw down the Broomstick, and I was anticipating you go for it here because there's generally not all too much in terms of actual pressure that you need to answer with the play of Thresher plus Broomstick.
Hmm. He can, I guess, actually make a pretty aggressive push with the Thresher plus Broomstick next turn if that ends up being the play, though, right? Like, he can, the way he has this set up, he can actually just straight up attack face with the Twilight Runner most of the time, see what his draw is, and then worst case scenario, he just Thresher Brooms and probably clears the board.
Okay, that's a fair point. I guess if it is exactly the play of Blade Dance that you're afraid of, and, even to augment that, it would pretty much have to be Twin Slice plus Blade Dance in that exact combo to get the clear. It's unlikely that it's there, so Swids is taking a small amount of risk here. But like you said, being able to clear off the board, maybe just getting Guardian Animals straight up next turn to get the other pressure.
Right.
I like it. Ooh.
Hero Power first, and Draki Warblades after. Looks like the line that Kevin has settled on this turn, which I like. This makes sense to me.
Yeah, it does set up for Glaive Bound.
Exactly, yeah. He has double Glaive Bound in his hand, so making sure he rations out those weapon swings that he doesn't have to spend mana on as efficiently as possible. Yikes. That's a lot of beasts already.
That is. He's still got 2, so Guardian Animals is live. for the full value as it stands. And I think you do just start with attacking face with the Twilight Runner here, right? You have the potential for an incredible draw, and if not, you still have the backup of Lake Thresher Broomstick.
Trade here, though. Looks like first draw was Overflow. It was indeed. Ever so slightly awkward with his current hand.
You take the one overdraw, right, to get down
I think so.
double defender. Feels so clean.
Yep. Just not getting better value than this. There's the beast, though. These Guardian Animals are now busted at this point. Embark is relevant. It's a relevant card in the matchup for sure.
Hasn't been the cleanest start here for Swids, but I think even as it currently stands, unless a big Magtheridon play can come down, which is now very much a consideration for Kevin, he should be able to just dump his hand, draw with the Overflow, get down the Survival, get down Ysera, and probably be playing on the offensive enough to the point where Taunt won't even matter that much.
I do apologize. I've pretty much fully readjusted to the non-Magtheridon version of the matchup. That's so much more common. But while Magtheridon is a threat in Kevin's deck, which is a little bit unusual these days, if you know your opponent's running Magtheridon, suddenly the riddle of why this broom is not being used very liberally from Swids' side is a lot more easy to solve, isn't it, Eric?
Good point, good point. I wasn't even really considering it for that purpose in particular. It's more just broom is a good card generally, but that does make sense.
12-12 is certainly the disaster in the matchup. A lot of times before brooms were being played in the very early days of the expansion, the only real creative solution to it was like a giant speaker Gidra coming down with like survival of the fittest and whatever else. So having the ability to use the broom to deal with the 12-12 now, I think, is pretty important.
And I think Swids is considering that here, because outside of it, you know, it feels like a fairly easy play of just get down your Twilight Runner, buff it up one of your minions with the Iron Bark to take out the board fairly easily. Just teetering on the edge of that board space issue where you can make it so the Magtheridon can't summon all three of his guys to kill off, but not quite able to maneuver it on this turn, sadly.
That's a very good point.
And now we go.
Yeah. 12-12 time.
I grow impatient.
As do I. We just cursed, Eric? When we cast Hearthstone series, are we just gonna forever be resigned to watching players not play 12-12s?
I grow impatient.
Yeah, not playing the Deathwing Mad aspect, not playing the Deathwing, not playing Magtheridon every time.
Yeah. Alright.
Kevin saving the day. God bless you, Kevin.
You're the hero we all need.
Unleashed!
Yep.
Oh. That's sticking. That is sticking for a turn. But how you sequence this is actually really interesting, because there's the line that Swids can go for of trying to hide the Speaker Gidra behind the Teacher's Pet here to set up for... I mean, it's something to consider, right? To try and get down the survival of the fittest for next turn. Obviously, if it dies, you've just given up the possibility of Gidra plus 7 cost spell on the same turn.
Right. The problem is Gidra plus 7 cost spell doesn't actually really help you that much against a 12-12. It's one short of being the clean kill with Bog Beam, and it's also one off being like relevant health where it could actually use the Wind Fury effect to be able to double trade in. So pretty awkward breakpoint.
do you just tempo it out because you get more value off the survival? I mean, the other way to go about it...
It can't be right. It can't be right. You're almost talking me into it, but there's no way. There's no way that's a Hearthstone play.
But then what are you doing? Like, the only way to make it big enough to chew through the 12-12... I mean, okay, I was going to say that you have to go survival of the fittest and then Gidra plus 7 cost spell. But I guess if the Teacher's Pet eats up part of the health total, Gidra can come in to finish off the rest with Fog Beam. So, okay, I'll take this line, I accept it.
Yeah, there aren't too many ways that Demon Hunter actually kills, sends multiple sources of damage into the same thing, right? They're very linear in how they use removal a lot of the time, where it's just where their face attack can go on that turn, or it's Blade Dance, which is across a wide board and doesn't really interact with a Death Rattle. So outside of Soulshear and Gladebound Adept, which just happen to both be in the hand right now from Kevin, there's a pretty good chance that at least part of this body will get to stick and deal a tiny bit of damage to the Magtheridon that would be needed on the following turn. And actually, that's a potentially promising outcome as well, because anytime that Zealot's Pride does get summoned, you do get the ability to rush your entire board into the 12-12.
Yeah, and it does feel to me like Kevin maybe forgot that for a second, then was like, oh yeah, that's really annoying for me here.
Yep.
As...
Iron Bark now will add the health needed.
I mean, the clear's there anyway, right? If you just want to take it with
the clear,
taking the value trade with the Gidra, or yeah, either way, it doesn't matter. It's the same effect, really. Kind of close, right? Because having a 2 health minion on the board, obviously with an incredible amount of attack and Wind Fury, is that worth it just for the small percentage chance that it instantly wins you the game with the Iron Bark here?
It's possible, but it's also this is also Swid's last Iron Bark. It's one of the last lines of protection that he has in the deck, because he's also out of Anubisath defenders because he dumped them both early on with the overflow. He isn't able to get value out of those with the survival of the fittest, as I've been talking about. So he's now kind of committed to this just being the last Taunt minion potentially that he has this entire game, which is a little bit scary when he only finds himself at 18.
I think Swid's here as well. While you are kind of sad about it, you can just accept that tanking this is still game winning. It's not over if you have to just straight up tank the 9. So it feels to me like you just start with Skull and then sink the Twin Slice if you have to.
I'm not really seeing the alternative with the hand he currently has. I'm sure there's lots of decisions that the Skull can lead to, but I think this turn always starts with casting Skull, and he should get on with that and give himself more time to consider the lines once he gets to this point.
Well, there's both ways to kill it off on this turn.
Yes.
With the Shard Shatter or the Soul Share, however he wants to go about it.
I don't think the face damage is enormously relevant for Swids in the position that he's in, because I think the position he's in is just stick a giant board before he dies here, whether it be through the Ysera or the Mount Cellar that he still has remaining.
I mean, if the 9 had been tanked there and the Eldraki Warblades wasn't in hand, maybe he could just go Panthera into Survival of the Fittest and cheese out the game that way. There were ways for him to get there, I think. But I agree at this point, the game plan is stick the big minion.
16 cards, 7 of them portals, 1 of them a Mount Cellar, which I think we can file away in about the same category right now. And then not a lot else, really, remaining in the deck for Swids.
Whereas on Kevin's side, it is damage supremo right now. This all just has to start going to the dome. He knows that both Iron Barks have been either burned or used. Teacher's Pet come down. It's go time.
Treasure? Loot?
Looks like he's deciding here. I believe there's a Marrow Slicer in the pool as well, which I guess was actually his preferred outcome if he was doing it this way around. Deciding that 19 health was plenty to play with if he had to, which I think he's probably right about, but straight off the rip!
Oy,
Just
oy,
immediate Emerald Explorer! Immediate,
Disaster.
Darek!
Absolute disaster here. Swids can start messing around with trading first, which is what I was looking at on that turn, but I guess with Broomstick he wants to get the damage face and then...
Yeah, exactly. He's going to rush the
Value
new
trade?
dragons. New dragons into
Sure.
the minions, and then the Ysera will go face to push damage.
Oh, the hothead as well! Oh.
A simple spell should do.
Slow down!
Okay,
Slow
steady
down!
now. Steady now. Steady.
Oh! But the Broomstick can't even be played here, so the board... If Kane comes down, is it ever scary here for Swids?
Yes.
It is, right?
Extremely. Yep.
He's just dead.
Claw?
There's an out. But is there enough mana to deliver lethal?
18, 5 on board, 8 from the
10, 12,
Kane,
15.
10, 12, 14, 16, 17. Yeah, I think he'd have it, right? That is not
Doesn't
Kane
find it,
being
though.
drawn, though.
Lightning Bloom was played on the previous turn, though, right? So Swids does not have mana to play the survival here,
Mm-hmm.
which maybe leaves Kevin in a place where he can survive the turn if he goes for a big clear on one of the minions with the lifesteal equipped, but it seems risky.
Right. Yeah, Swids bloomed before he played his nature studies, which I can only imagine there was some out in his head for a card that he wanted to play immediately that turn, because that's why you do that kind of stuff, right? You play your you have to play your ramp card first, then you play nature studies. I got lost a little bit in the excitement of all the dream portals of recognizing
Yeah.
all the mana breakpoints in terms of what exactly he was digging for that turn, but certainly a very significant downside of whatever he ended up going for with the Lightning Bloom, that he's not then immediately able to survive with the fist on the following turn.
Indeed. You have to imagine, like, Bite comes to mind as one of the best ways to get some extra health, maybe Healing Touch, something like that. In the end, though, it's a lot of damage being sunk into a board that Kevin wants nothing to do with, and the damage is drying up very, very fast here.
Excess. Oh! There's a Lightning Bloom! Swids, there's a Lightning Bloom in your hand! Swids!
So let's end the game now, buddy.
Swids, there's a Lightning Bloom in your hand.
He got this. He's got this every time.
Swids?
He's just toying with us, Subtle. This is the level of play that we are at. Okay, he's bailed out. He's bailed out. He can still do it.
He just noticed! He just noticed! He took the second one! Yes! French clap! French clap! Biggest French clap! Come on, you can do it.
I mean, what a Swids win. You gotta say it. Like, just a sick game played throughout, clearly knowing everything that was going on, and at the end, fluffing it all up, but being bailed out no matter what.
Oh, incredible. The face of a champion, Darren.
Literally just sat there like, boff. Yeah, you know, it happens.
I just love that he had to cast Nature Studies, and then the game had to shove Lightning Bloom in his face for him to suddenly realize, like, oh god, Lightning Bloom, yeah. Oh wait, I can still take the second one. All right, we're good.
Love to see it. The Druid getting the win there against all the odds there from Swids at the end. Kind of going as expected, even with a ridiculous way to close things out, because the Demon Hunter doesn't like that matchup at all. A matchup it does like a little bit more, though, at least, is the Secret Rogue, which is the final deck left for Swizz. It's going to have to be a 3-0 reverse sweep for Kevin on the Secret Rogue Mirror, the Demon Hunter, and the Druid. I got to say, though, that even if we want to call it a 50-50 and a favorable with the Demon Hunter, I'm coming around more and more to the idea that Rogue is in a really good spot against Druid.
Yeah, I certainly have come around to that as well myself. I told the story in Grandmasters multiple weeks. I think that I've been speaking to some players who are like, this is absolutely free for Rogue, and then speaking to others who are saying this is absolutely free for Druid. And upon further investigation, it was really just, how many of the Druids were drawing ramp a lot of the time that was deciding on how people thought they were favored in the matchup. But I think over time, as people have learned how to finesse this deck a little bit better on the Rogue side, I think I've come down more on the side of the Rogue in that matchup as well.
Kind of a weird inclusion here of Faceless Corruptor, a card we haven't seen in Rogue, or, really in Hearthstone very much at all, for quite a few months now. I'd have to imagine it's designated more for the tempo matchups rather than, like, the anti-control matchups, although I guess it is a fair amount of damage that you can start pushing towards the Demon Hunter. But for the most part, I think it's fair to say that for this matchup, you want that bad boy right there, and you want a lot of cards you can play with it.
Yeah. We actually tested this matchup against each other in particular, I think, prepping for one of the weeks of GM, and came to the conclusion that Soulshare is potentially a pretty important card, I believe, going first. I think that was the way we divined it, right? Because being able to deal 4 damage on certain turns is very important. So when going second, you can do it with Coin Marrow Slicer, whereas going first, usually the best way to do it is Soulshare Hero Power, if they go in on the early questing adventurer. And yeah, Kevin here, holding on to the Soulshare, making sure he's got that early clearing option.
Yeah, it makes it a little bit more simple for him as well when you have the follow-up of Shard Shatter Mystic, which, even if it doesn't come down on turn 3, you want it to be active, no matter what, because on turn 5, just having a 5 damage effect to clear off a questing as well could be very useful.
All right, it's a lot of clearing power, but not a great deal of aggression so far for Kevin. I know that was another point where you were largely playing the Demon Hunter, and unsurprisingly, since you are the most aggressive Demon Hunter player I've ever seen, I know there was a lot of debate where you were saying you really wanted to throw away removal just to look for aggressive cards and just actually start hitting me in the face.
Yes, I think I'm more towards that kind of plan when you're on the coin as Demon Hunter, because then the ability for Rogue to make these explosive turns is much more limited in the early turns. I would definitely hear out the argument that you say, you know what, if they have the questing at the start, you're not really looking to clear it off anyway. You're just kind of hoping it's not there, and just go for the damage instead. But I do think I agree with these hands from Kevin here, because if it's not the questing, even just a wide board full of lackeys and the Pharaoh Cat, Blackjack Stunner, all these 1-drops and miscreants that can come down. It's not bad at all to have an answer to that.
This questing is potentially going to pop off in Swid's hand, though. The way he is currently looking like he's trying to milk it just a little bit. The Pharaoh Cat picked up late, which means it's all in one turn with the questing adventurer and the coin Pharaoh Cat Shadow Step, and then double Secret Passage potentially to follow that up on consecutive turns if it's not removed.
If this sticks, this could just be game-winning right now for Swids. It's going to have to tank a lot of damage, of course, with the play of Soulshare this turn into probably Lapidary on the following turn. But any kind of a decent Secret Passage, and it very possibly will get big enough to survive that. Yeah.
6/6 certainly puts it out of range of a lot of things immediately. Soulshare Shard Shatter would be probably the most efficient way to deal 6, but that can't come down until 5 mana.
Yeah.
Demons?
You can obviously start talking about where you want to point the Soulshare, but I'm pretty sure you just leave the Pharaoh Cat up, sink it into the questing, and just pray against all the odds that you're able to clear it next turn. What else is there?
I don't know, Daruk. I'm just making noises. Don't ask me for anything constructive.
Yeah, it sucks, but to me, that is the only real line. You can, of course, pray that you draw Twin Slice to go with the Blade Dance. Maybe an Eldraki Warblades to buy yourself a little bit more time.
So now, Insta Passage on Swid's side has to be right. This hand
Let's
does
see
not
what we
look
get
like
off the top.
It doesn't look like it pops off hard enough for a questing adventurer currently.
That's +3 right there, and +3 is the target on this turn. You know that the most damage they are likely to be able to do is 5.
Very true.
That's the expected amount of damage. I like it.
But still, if you go Pharaoh Cat Secret Passage, what are the odds that you play 0 cards? What are the odds that you actually play 3 or 4, right?
Okay. I mean, it's still likely that you are going to be playing at least the 3 cards on the turn.
Yeah. I think I potentially would have Ferrocatted first and then Secret Passage.
Okay.
But these are the turns that are always going to spark enormous debates, right? It's just going to happen. Secret Passage turns are
of course.
Very, very complicated, very hard to get right.
Whoa. Texas Blast? I want to shoot my opponent in the face.
I do too.
Yes.
As does Swids. Is there any breakpoint where you have to Ray of Frost your own minion here? Even if you can't think of it, is it better to just do it anyway in case you forgot about something? Probably.
Yeah, I mean, there are obviously many different ways that you can deal with damage. Like, it's Marrow Slicer plus Twin Slice. It's triple Twin Slice or whatever in the turn, although that probably
yeah.
last turn. But there are things that you can play around here by throwing down the Ray of Frost. And the questing is the win condition. You do anything you can to protect it. I really don't hate this from Swids. And it's working.
Demons. Demons.
It's just not stopping the flood here. Kevin can pick apart pieces of this, but there is no real way to answer that questing, and he is just looking dead.
Demons.
Shard Shatter on this turn into Shard Shatter again next turn. Maybe if it doesn't get cleared or some nonsense like that. It's getting slimmer and slimmer.
11. Apexis Blast is +6. 17. Backstab is +1. That's 18. He's 1 off.
Oh!
He is 1 off.
1 off.
Can he make up the Apexis Blast damage on other cards this turn? I don't think so, right?
I mean, I'm sure there's a way if you want to go for it. Like, there's Eviscerates in the deck for him. If he goes Secret Passage, there are outs for lethal.
Yeah. I'm just talking about current hand. It's not there, right?
Current hand, I ain't seeing it.
Mm-hmm. If in doubt, look in your passage, right? Come on.
Words to live by, Subtle.
Yep.
I mean, also, if you're in doubt, put your opponent to 1 health is something to consider, but with the healing in the deck, you're potentially playing with fire there.
Yeah, Aldraki, Twin Slice. No, I'm out of mana. I was going to end that with Blade Dance. But no, it doesn't work.
Already gone.
Yeah.
Ray of Frost, your own guy here again. Why not at this point? Has to be removal and healing on this turn. Kevin only has 6 mana to work with. Skull is not in the outcast position. I'm not seeing any way for him to dig himself out of this one.
Yeah, he's going to have one last cursory glance at all of his options. I think the only real option he has here is to take matters into his own hands. Soul Shard Lapidary, swing into that questing. The GG.
Yep. Going to be digging through his deck with Skull. Obviously no chance of surviving at all here. But while Kevin was down at 40th position at 6-2 due to his tiebreakers, Swids was right up at the top. This is the important talking point now. Swids at 7-2 is potentially looking at a spot in top 8. We need to work through all the tiebreakers, figure out how everything shakes out, because there are some very, very strong competitors. But if there was going to be any chance for Swids to get there, he just did it in stunning fashion with a very, very swift 3-0.
Yeah, I will say I think it was a more important series for Swids to win there. Obviously, we talked about the benefits of going 7-2 for any player, and they are huge. You know, getting that free qualification coming through, getting the extra prize money, moving yourself up those standings for GM. Again, you don't have to win tournaments; you just have to accumulate money over the course of several Masters tours, especially if you're from the APAC or Americas region. But it's all about making top 8s for a lot of these players. And, you know, Swids, as a GM, you can say maybe it doesn't mean as much to him at this point. But with the new way that the Masters Tours rotations come in, with it being a rolling 6-tour qualification period, GMs can now create this buffer zone for themselves where they can actually build up enough money that it lasts for a significant amount of time, where if they get relegated, they're then automatically inserted basically back at the top of those standings and then get re-promoted immediately into the next season without having to miss a heartbeat. So even for the Grandmasters, fighting their way up to the top of those standings are very, very important.
Yeah, very, very exciting stuff now. I mean, while we got word while that was going on, I think I saw that Lion has gone up to 8-1 now, which I believe will guarantee her spot in
I
top
feel
8
so
here.
bad. I feel so bad that I have to grimace every time we get the news that Lion is doing well. I have to clarify every time. Lion's great. I love Lion. It's just because Dan picked her, and I don't want Dan to win the prediction contest.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie, Subtle, it's not a good look on you, okay?
I
don't
know.
think this whole hating on Lion thing, you're on the wrong side of history. She's one of those people that you're just not allowed to dislike because of obviously how important her win was and impressive it was at last year's Global Championship. But we are all done with our initial match from round 9. It's the last match of the day, so we're wrapping things up now towards the end of our second day. We're going to be bringing you a couple more matches as we get a real good idea of who our top 8 is. And I'm sure at the end of the day, we'll have an official standings for you as for who our top 8 is going to be before we wrap things up tomorrow. So make sure that you stick around so that you find out who that is going to be. We're going to go to a quick break, but when we come back, the last couple of the matches of the day here from Masters Tour Montreal Online.
Masters Tour Montreal Online is brought to you by T-Mobile. Switch today and rank up to America's largest 5G network. T-Mobile.
Welcome back. We are here still covering Masters Tour Montreal, and we are in our final round. We just had one match as a feature match finishing, but we're going to bring you some more content to finish out the day. I'm Raven, and joining me is Frodan to finish today. And it's been quite the day, and it looks like we're edging towards getting just close to be able to confirm that final top 8. And it's, even just glancing at, say, the top 16, it's looking to be a pretty strong one either way, Dan.
Yeah, we already have some results from the Swiss, and if you've been kind of following the bracket as well as social media, some people have, already told people, their fans, that the slots for top 8 have already been decided. But, for people who kind of want to watch some of the gameplay and maybe are hanging in suspense as they have the stream pulled up, we're going to cover the remainder of the games here. We're going to first have Zuhex, who has Mage, Priest, and Rogue available for this series, as it is very much the core 3 of 4 decks. These 3 classes, along with Druid, have been the most represented this weekend here in Montreal.
Yeah, and going with that, the Rogue we've been seeing at least a lot in the European Grandmasters of, the secret package, the kind of, I like to think of it as like a builder win condition Rogue if your plan of landing a Questing Adventurer or Edwin does not quite work out. Zhao Dai, on the other hand, though, with a Zoo Warlock, Weapon Rogue, and then Face Hunter is bringing quite a different lineup, just a highly aggressive 3 decks. And then honestly, his 4th deck is banned out, but it is Bomb Warrior, which I think is pretty close to an aggro deck in itself.
Yeah, I would definitely say that this is very much an aggressive lineup. Weapon Rogue and Face Hunter and Zoo Warlock all really try to close the game before people get their late game synergies online. They are capable of playing into the late game. But, as we've seen previously with Shao Dai series in particular, you don't want to stay in that late game scenario for too long. You want to end it pretty quickly. So here we go. Zuhex on the Priest, Shao Dai on that Rogue. Do you believe this Rogue is better equipped at beating Priest compared to other variants of Rogue?
So this is a tough one, right? I don't know if better equipped I'll agree or disagree with, but it has a much more straightforward game plan, right? Which is get them. You're going to be playing minions early on, such as Spy Mistress, so you can see the rest of the curve line up very well for Zhao Dai. And it's just a highly aggressive, high burst, early game focused deck. Whereas the secret version is generally much more slower, and he's playing for like a long, drawn-out value game. So for me, the other Rogue is much more of an exhausting type of approach, whereas this one is pretty much just max aggro all of the time. And just as you can see, we are going into, this is game number 2. Zhao Dai has already won with his Warlock in game number 1 against Zuhex's Mage, just so we're all up to date on everything. But yeah, I personally, Dan, I'm a bigger fan of this Weapon Rogue than I am of any of the other archetypes right now.
Yeah, that's entirely fair. And, I think this Rogue deck is better at beating Priest in particular, largely because not many Priest decks are running weapon removal, and they are running AoE or like ward removal. They play like stealth minions and are reliant on stealth minions to land and constantly build the board with like Questing Adventurer. Eventually, Priest will have the removal tools to deal with all that. They can't stop a weapon that just grows stronger and stronger, and you keep hitting them for 5, 6, 7 a turn. Unless they have either weapon removal in their deck, or they have Zephyrus and playing a Highlander Priest and try to find a way to summon weapon removal that way.
Yeah, and one way to look at a lot of the minions in this Rogue deck here for Zhao Dai, as he does get that self-sharpening sword number 1 equipped nice and early, is that if each minion he has gets to deal damage once, that's probably going to be just enough to win your average game. and stealth helps with that. The Steel Dancers going wide helps with that. Even the Volpera. If the Volpera goes down and does get to buff a weapon swing, then that's already done its job. If it sticks, that's fantastic. But in general, if you can just push these minions to face with the help of the mechanics like stealth, Zhao Dai looks like, even now already, he's putting himself in a great position to just honestly just burst Zuhex out of the game. That the defense just doesn't seem to be there, at least in the near future.
Yeah, I like playing just getting a presence onto the board. I think right now the name of the game is try to avoid losing health at all costs. You can see that Zuhex not going to prioritize that sharpening sword, not going to even bother with any raised dead and trying to go for cheaper tempo. It's purely about staying alive if possible. And, maybe in tough situations, he's going to have to play Galakron to gain that burst of armor. in order to survive. But right now, it does look like Xiaodai pretty nice in the driver's seat. He has the option of playing the Toxin Blade and the Deadly Poison, attacking, making that weapon go up to 5 attack for this turn.
It'll be even higher, right, with the Vulpera down, which means this cutting class is going to be insane.
Oh, he's going to kill the Wretched Tutor. Really afraid of to give a bunch of lifesteal bursts. A lot of respect being shown. Personally, I like pushing that damage.
Yeah, I think it's kind of reminiscent of the way Demon Hunters had to learn how to play against Priest, is work out what minions are actually going to be a potential huge problem if they get buffed, and what minions aren't. Like, what can he ignore? And now that Zhao Dai has actually picked up a sap as well, even if there is an Apotheosis landed, he does have at least a snap answer to say, okay, you got your heal once, but you're not going to get it again.
Oh, interesting.
Huh.
Xiaodai finds 2 taunt minions off the Jandis, both that have death rattle effects. One gains armor, one deals damage to the board. But that's not important. What's important is actually Xiaodai sticks a board. And so I have to imagine that he's tempted to make the Abomination harder to kill, because if the Abomination's easier to kill, then that means Suhex has more convenient access to AoE.
Right.
So
It's one of those weird ones that you actually pick the weaker minion to be stronger, if that makes sense. It's kind of a strange one to look at. Zuhex does have a few options here. Does have that Wretched that he got from the Raised Dead to try and help with maybe even more AoE.
Grades getting low.
yeah, it's all true. And right now, Zuhex really needs to find stabilization. Oh, it was the Abomination, which ended up helping him clear off the board entirely. Interesting. I guess it is somewhat inconsequential, because that 2 damage would still be at a 4/3, so he could trade anyways.
May I have this?
Either way, Xiaodai is in a pretty strong spot, because as we mentioned, struggling to find any way for Zuhex to remove that weapon.
Interestingly enough, there was a small part of me then, and thinking that he could have actually not swung the weapon and held off for one more turn, so he still had Steel Dancer. What do you think about that? Because his self-sharpening sword next turn hits for 1, so it's not exactly a big payoff.
Yeah, I think next turn Xiaodai might be planning to just go for a Secret Passage and potentially even just kill. I think that's what he's leaning towards. He could end up just playing like a Greyheart stage turn. Oh, wow, 2 Secret Passages. I mean, it's kind of leaning towards that state where you really want to start killing your opponent, because your opponent's at 7. Secret Passage can generate damage to end the game.
Yeah, I think what he might be digging for as well is his 2 Eviscerates still in the deck, right? And he is drawing through his deck very quickly. And, like, for example, even if he doesn't do it this turn, he's drawn extra cards now, and then next turn he still has Secret Passage for double Eviscerate to try and do. And maybe he doesn't even need that now with double Stealth minions in play. And at a quick glance, I don't actually see a good way for Zuhex to clean these up. No Pyromancer in his hand, and that's double Wretched has already been played earlier on, so even just this Spy Mistress is a huge problem here.
Yeah, I think the one thing that Xiaodai is constantly playing around is like the Apotheosis opportunities that Priest has, and Zuhex's Highlander Priest only has 1 copy of it. Go ahead and see if Wandmaker can do anything. Doesn't seem like it. No access to AoE. He's going to go for Brightwing as a desperation move. Finds High Priest on it. That's not going to be good enough. And that looks like Zuhex is moments away from shuffling it up here, as I don't really feel like he can hold off even the pressure that's on board right now.
Yeah, I think he would have had to have actually like preemptively committed to Siamat to just kill off like maybe a Rush and Taunt or something to kill off the 3/3. I don't know. That looked really rough there. Gonna go for Secret Passage into what, like Zephyrus something?
Not enough time.
No, not at all.
And had he started off with Mind Vision, he might have been able to find an opportunity to use that Apotheosis, but ends up conceding. Xiaodai takes game number 2 with his aggressive rogue. And it just overall showcases like why that rogue deck is particularly powerful versus priest versus the other variants of it, just because there was no stopping that weapon. It just kept growing and growing, and he had another one in case he needed to get start up once more the engine to start putting out damage.
Yeah, and also in seeing the strength of the deck, you also see the weakness in some of the games when you don't have access to an early self-sharpening sword. You do struggle a little bit because you end up just using your dagger hero power with a couple of buffs to do some damage, but as you can see there, it's not even close to the amount of damage that a self-sharpening does with buffs over the course of the many swings it gets. So, it does mean that there is a chance to whiff, but we are going to be moving swiftly on into our game number 3. Xiao Dai, of course, with this aggro lineup, bringing the Face Hunter to the table, but it's going up against Mage, which I feel, at least, Dan, is one of the harder matchups as Face Hunter right now.
Yeah, so you feel like this is difficult for Face Hunter to beat?
Yes. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, and I that makes sense if the mage gets off. I feel like a lot of it's determined kind of off of early context clues, like who starts off on the coin, because mage tends to do better on that. Who has the early curve. But I do think that, generally speaking, I do enjoy being more on the hunter side, because if you're able to get that early game damage going, then you don't have to worry too much about mage constantly freezing your board. Because that's the situation that Zuhex will probably end up going towards, where like you play a bunch of mid-sized minions, they play Ray of Frost, you just have weapons and kill command and hero power to finish it off. But I think it really does depend on how the early game shapes up.
100% agree, and the key for me is, although the mage might not get them every game, this mage does have the tools to actually deal with these minions. You look at Ray of Frost, the arcane missiles from the Spellwing. Devolving missiles even can help out in certain situations, but even just landing anything early on to have these bits of removal, it is a really big deal. But as you pointed out, this start looks a little bit better for Xiao Dai than it does Zuhex right now, because there's just a lot of damage on board, and Xiao Dai gets to play this turn pretty freely. So still looking pretty okay, although I imagine he might have wanted the big doggo there to actually hit Zuhex in the face for 5 instead of trading.
For sure. I just find that Face Hunter feels similar to the Soul Demon Hunter in that they don't have convenient access to ways to remove a lot of that stuff, and if they take too much damage, there's almost a point of no return where Mage is going to be like constantly fishing for cards, playing suboptimally in order to survive. And that's the losing spot that Mage find themselves often. The caveat to that is actually that Mana Giant. I think that Mana Giant ends up being one of the most important cards in any burn-based matchup that Mage faces. That, like, if Mage doesn't have enough time, the key really is Sorcerer's Apprentice, card generation, and Mana Giant. And that's the way you can actually end up winning. So I feel like Zuhex actually does have the tools to potentially turn this around. Brain Freeze off the top of that Wand Maker is also huge. That was a massive pickup for Zuhex.
Right. And that's it, right? I mean, there are other tools that were there that did a similar job with a generated Ray of Frost. Arcane Missiles, to an extent, could have done okay, but yeah, the Brain Freeze was pretty clutch. But now we see one of like the power plays from this Face Hunter, which is actually Scavengers into the beast to be able to draw the Phase Stalker and then actually just get these secrets rolling while you're pressing that hero power. And it does cause a huge issue, because not only is the Stalker tough to deal with, it's effectively Yeti stats, but this freezing trap, okay, now the 2/2 can't make a trade. This is awkward, and it's not like Zuhex can feel comfortable spending 4 mana to really ever replay that one maker in this game.
Needs to find a Ray of Frost or something. Ugh.
Arcane Explosion for next turn?
I guess so. He's going to have to take this damage from Phase Stalker, and yet another secret can come out.
Yeah, and just a quick glance, Xiao Dai is running a 1 Freezing Trap, 1 Pack Tactics, 1 Pressure Plate. So a 3 secret package, 1 of each. Pretty interesting, actually, because you normally see at least a 2 of on one of them. That sometimes changes, but there are a lot of different ways to build the secret package in this list. And I feel like even just in this tournament, Dan, I've seen every way to build it, because there's been so many different variations. Oh, it's a lot.
Totally agree. And wow, Xiao Dai is finding Mini Leok, and is going to totally press in another 9 damage on top of that hero power. Already starting to get into a dire situation here for Zoohex. This is probably the last turn he has to turn the board around. Otherwise, Shadai's got him in a chokehold.
The good thing here is he knows this secret isn't freezing trap. Oh wait, it's just going for an evocation.
Okay.
Oh, okay. I didn't think it was going to go for
He was hoping the Violet Spellwing would die, but at the same time, it wouldn't get this, the Arcane Missiles either. Find another Brain Freeze. Okay.
So does he actually go for Studies for a 0-cost spell damage? Doesn't get it.
Yeah, that would have been huge.
Oh. So if you got Lab Partner, then you could still Brain Freeze an Arcane Explosion.
Yeah. I don't think he'd go for it though. You just need to find some way. Right.
Oh look at the difference though. If this was a Lab Partner, the board would be gone.
Right, and every single damage point really matters from this point on. Shaodai finds another Leok, this time big Leok. And that matters. Now it's one fewer turns is needed for Shaodai's hero power to come into full effect here.
You here for the tour?
And Shaodai is effectively going all in. And that I'm going to pressure. You have to show that you have more access to AoE. Zoohex does not.
Explode.
Not yet.
Oh, it's going to...
Evocation number 2.
Oh, okay.
Whoa, Blizzard.
Ice Barrier. Ice Barrier's huge.
And Ice Barrier, you're right. Which one's more important here?
I think... Oh, it's so tough. I think it has to be Ice Barrier because he does have the Arcane Missiles from the Spellwing. Because if he doesn't go for Ice Barrier, Hero Powers will kill him. I think. Because he can't actually play the Blizzard and the Mana Giant this turn. If he could play Blizzard and Mana Giant, I'd definitely go for that. But I think he has to go Barrier.
Okay, if he goes Ice Barrier... Oh, not to mention Pack Tactics.
Job done.
Okay, so... This ends up clearing... I totally get what you're saying. I feel like if I'm in Zoohex position, though, I have to think optimistically. Scavenge Ingenuity at the top. Okay. Volpentinger just helps build up the board, but most importantly, Zoohex now has only 3 turns. 2 turns, really, because the 3rd turn he's dead.
Yeah, Ray of Frost off the top is huge, though, because suddenly these minions just don't get to attack next turn, which, of course, would have been huge for Zhao Dai. The Mana Cyclone coming down, and I believe this is going to be a pretty straightforward Giant into Conjurers. Wait, is he aiming more attack? Did he get Rush? He did.
He found Troublemaker.
What? You gonna cry?
Holy cow. And all of a sudden, Shaodai's the one on the clock.
Just a lethal setup. It's
Huffer.
Huffer? No. Wait, that's just game, right? You can Conjurers call in the Misha and just Fireball. Or Ray of Frost.
I'm inclined to say yes. I think it looks like it is. 10, 15, 18, 20.
It is now.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah, because
very
now
much
with the Ray of
lethal.
Frost, it's guaranteed. Insane. Ray pinged, all face Fireball, and honestly, did not see that coming, Dan, because that looked like that was just a couple of hero powers away from Zhao Dai sweeping the series.
Very much so. And we kind of talked about the importance of Mana Giant in aggressive matchups, and that's the reason why. Because, yeah, the Conjurer's Calling off of just the Mana Cyclone was pretty nutty, right? You can't always rely upon that, but like every strategy starts with Mana Giant being available to be played,
right.
Whether it's Mana Giant and like you basically freeze the board constantly while playing Mirror Image, or it's Mana Giant, and then, control the state of the board, and then draw a bunch of cards to hit the natural Conjurer's Calling in your deck. There's a lot of these kinds of situations that pop up if you're able to get that Mana Giant. So, recommendation is that if you're definitely knowing that you're going up against an aggressive deck, you got to be mulliganing for that.
And that's the trick, right? There's one stage which is surviving or being able to kill off minions and not get rushed down by Hunter. But then the next stage is, well, how do you actually win? Because as we saw, Zhao Dai was on like best part of 30 health for most of that game. So it's not as if like, oh, you just stave off Hunter and it's fine. It was actually just 2 hero powers away from winning anyway. Well, as you mentioned, Zuhex did manage to get down the big giant and the big plays, and that has made this series continue. Zhao Dai now, of course, on his Hunter once again, as this is how Conquest works, but Zuhex going for the Rogue, and Zuhex actually does run the secret package of the Rogue, so the Plagiarize, with 1 ambush in there as well, and double dirty trick, so definitely a different build from what we saw from Zhao Dai early in this series.
All right, well, let's see if the Hunter deck, which finds once again the Imprisoned Felmaw. And remember, we talked about how the Imprisoned Felmaw dying was a huge deal. I mean, Shadow was off like 4 hit points that game. So you can see how those foundational building blocks do end up making massive differences. Speaking of the foundation of it, Zuhex thinking about backstabbing the other Volpentinger. Do you like that?
The respect, I don't know. I don't know. I think I would have held it because Backstab is an amazing card, not only for just a combo activator, but also there are better targets. But I do also understand the value of not being hit for 1 every turn, and this Pharaoh Cat also being an additional minion that the Felmaw can go into. I think that's a pretty big deal too. Tough call though, because that did just cost him a Backstab.
Yeah, the backstab going down, definitely not ideal. Shao Dai also getting the trade onto the Candle Makers. Not really exactly what he's looking for either. This is honestly looking pretty good for Rogue. And it's kind of amazing that Pharaoh Cat plus backstab has basically handled the entire early aggression from Hunter.
Yeah, and this is one of the issues that when Hunter doesn't get to stick those Volpatingers, 1/1s are a problem, right? Because it doesn't really deal 1 damage that well without having the minions preemptively on board. So Pharaoh Cat sticking is going to get some work done, but look at that turn. The Freezing Trap active, actually Spell Burst the Initiates. It's also going to proc the Weapon Charge as well to allow Zhao Dai to swing again with the Eaglehorn Bow. Everything's looking pretty good here. The only frustration is going to be this. Exactly is the secret that Zhao Dai has. Because that means that Zuhex doesn't get, the very nice trade from that Pharaoh Cat into the 5/1.
Yeah, I'm looking at this Blackjack Stunner as a potential way to get back in right now, and I like that the most only because I think you need to aggressively protect your life total. You have cards compared to the Hunter right now. You have... Oh wow, he's taking the 5 from the Prison Felmaw. You have Secret Passage to help reload, and you have Questing Adventure to help outscale. So Shao Dai is the one who really needs to show that he has more than just weapon damage in hand and the Intrepid Initiate.
And that stunner was actually pretty nice. I think at a surface level, viewers might think like, oh, well, why wouldn't you sack the Felmaw? Because then it's dormant for another 2 turns and so on. That's true, but it's still a 5/4 that gets to attack, right? Which is dangerous. Whereas zapping the Initiate makes it so much worse, right? Because Hunter doesn't run a ton of spells. So it means not only does he have to pay 2 mana again for a 1/2 Initiate, it also has to be actually a playable spell for it to really be paid off there. So we've even now seen Zhao Dai actually try and protect the Initiate by using the hero power along with the Hunter to be able to just clear off this board. But suddenly, the threats just don't look that strong from Zhao Dai anymore, do they?
They don't, and it's largely because of that early Pharaoh Cat and the way it's kind of absorbed so much of Shao Dai's damage. And you can see that Zuhex being so aggressive early on to protect his life total has actually paid off for pretty nice dividends. That 1/1 Volpentinger sticking would have meant that Pharaoh Cat would have died, which means that he doesn't have Candle attacking and trading into a minion successfully, because that's the minion that gets bounced. And all these small little plays end up stacking and making a pretty huge impact into Zuhex's early game, which has allowed him a lot more freedom than he's used to, given that Rogue traditionally can struggle against aggressive decks.
Yeah. I like the tough call there for where to put the hero power. Pretty interesting, but I do agree, and I think this is almost a trademark of Face Hunter throughout history, not even this version, but the smallest of, 1 minion sticking around a bit too long, 1 point of damage here, 1 point of damage there, makes a world of difference when Face Hunter's involved. So I do agree, even though I was questioning the backstab, you can see in, a few turns down the line how much of a difference it's actually made.
Ooh. Secret Passage finds Hanar in a secret. I feel like Eviscerate also might be important.
Oh, Bone Wraith.
Okay.
Bone Wraith is a pretty good card too, Dan.
Yeah.
Oh, spoilt for choice, quite honestly. The good thing here, though, he'll have Bone Wraith next turn anyway. So I think he plays something of the other side of his hand here. And have Bone Wraith the turn afterwards. Even if he's going for Eviscerate, he definitely just goes Dirty Tricks, right? Or do you think he actually values the 1/4 on board as well?
I think I like Dirty Tricks a little bit better, just because, as you said, I value the boss effect. But actually, he's only holding 1 card, so maybe Dirty Tricks doesn't feel that important.
Because remember, he's not on empty cards, right? Because that was a Secret Passage turn, so it's not like he only has 1 card in his hand next turn. He does have all these, as you can see now, come back, which already does include the Dirty Trick. So I actually do like the 1/4. It's just an extra minion.
Yeah. It also has like implied taunt, because the Zoo Hex picks up ways to gain life, Ice Barrier, for example, or even just like Noble Sacrifice to stop Shadow's swings. That's huge. So
honestly, at this point, Vaporize makes a big difference, right? Like all these little things make a huge difference. All these secrets could frankly be game winning at this point.
Yeah, and the more I think about it, the more I like it, because kind of like what you said, he already has the Dirty Tricks in hand. And, Shadow has to make a tough decision of if he wants to ignore the Shadow Jewel Hanar. Not to mention,
so tough.
The mana worms growing with the spells also is going to be really significant. Some of that, like what Battle Fiend does, just like it just grows and grows, and all of a sudden you find yourself dead.
Yeah. Okay. So Jedi's deciding here. Zoo Hex from next turn has basically 2-turn lethal if he goes all face, but he knows he can't because at least this Stalker needs to be dealt with, or obviously it's lethal on the other side. So Jedi's just saying, look, I'm going to go all face. I have Boa hero power. That's going to be lethal no matter what, unless he does something pretty impressive with this Hanar. And we see right now, Counterspell, like none of these are good enough, so I think he has to go for like Redemption as the cheapest option to then go again.
Okay, Pressure Plate activates. Freezing Trap? No. None of these things. He has to play Bone Wraith now. Ran out of mana.
Yeah, can't roll a dice on another secret because Ice Barrier is the only one he was interested in at that point, and he just wouldn't have the mana to play anyway.
Shaodai 3 turns away.
I guess that's for Misha. But I actually wondered if he actually needed to even play Animal Companion that turn. Like, no companion helps him get through the Bone Wraith realistically, and there was a decent chance that was Dirty Tricks, therefore giving Zoo Hex more stuff. Again, like I said, like Misha would have been the outcome, because at least then that's a taunt, it soaks some damage, buys Zhao Dai some time. It has given Zoo Hex just a little bit more stuff to work with, and now with a Wand Thief and the Hanar Secret Chain, he's got to be pretty confident that one way or another he's going to be able to survive in this game right now.
All right, well, how does Zoo Hex find a way to get out? Is it the questing adventure? Is it the Wand Thief? And go ahead and look.
Okay, this is just pretty sick, because he's not even trying for Ice Barrier right now. He's just saying, actually, I'm just going to do this. Okay, I guess he can Shadow Step to try for it again from the One Thief. But he's just saying, actually, if I just make a big quest in which he will never kill in a million years, this is just
Fireball.
2-turn setup, and 2 turns is how long he has.
It looks like it. I think if he plays like Freezing Trap, just another secret, Redemption is perfectly
Redemption
fine
for the
here.
Bone Wraith.
Right. Okay. I mean, ambush
Extra
works
minion,
too.
I suppose. Most importantly, this is just a 2-turn setup, and at the moment, Zhao Dai only realistically has 2 damage with the hero power. Have to be kill command number 2.
Oh my gosh. It's
It's
over.
just game. What? How is Zuhex winning these games?
Well, I mean, obviously he's getting fortunate in certain corners, but he's also making sure to set himself up for opportunity. Do you look at like things like going back to that early backstab or like finding different corners to try and abate all that early aggression? I mean, even at one point, Zuhex willingly took a dagger to the face by trading into the imprisoned Velmaw. Everything he did in early game set himself up to be able to go for these turnarounds. And it's really exciting, right? Like this is the point of Rogue where it really separates players who can understand every little edge and players that kind of feel like, oh, Hunter just top decked me again. I just like didn't stabilize.
Right.
That one damage makes the world of difference.
100%. And you can see why, right? Because although it looked like Zuhex took a lot of damage in the early game, it ended up preventing more. And it was the same with the mage, right? He got brought very low with the mage, but it doesn't matter if you get brought low if you don't go to 0, right? You can be on 1 health, and if you win that next turn, who cares? You've won. So again, just impressive play here from Zuhex, honestly. Just having a really good, I think, keeping his cool basically against a pretty frustrating deck to play against sometimes when it is pressuring you so hard in these tough matchups. I really like what I've been seeing from Zuhex so far. It's going to be the final game of the series, no matter which way you look at it, though. And it's, of course, Hunter once again for Zhao Dai. And Zuhex now on the Priest. And this one, having Highlander Priest against this Hunter, this might be a little bit more difficult to deal with versus, for example, some of the Galakrond 2-off Priests we've been seeing this weekend.
Yeah, definitely. So Face Hunter has the edge over Mage, in my opinion, has the edge over Rogue. Against Priest, it should also have a pretty good edge in terms of getting started onto the board. But this opening hand from Zhao Dai where he coins out the Scavenge Ingenuity hitting the Wolfenfinger, I mean, he's going to need this to do a lot of work. And I mean, it's a lot of stats for turn 2.
Yeah.
Zuhex does not have access to AoE, so this is already looking like Zhao Dai might be at a good spot here early.
And pretty important as well is that he has this Voracious Reader early on, which means although he got Scavengers into the Volpatinger, normally I think you're looking for the Stalker, sorry. I don't know why I'm blanking on that card today. Normally looking for the Stalker to get the secret chain going. But here, with the Voracious Reader, it means that the card draw is going to be pretty solid in general. So these 3/3s are actually going to get some work done.
Ooh, Freezing Trap as well. It's spicy to make the Mind Flayer basically be put in a tough position. And that's where the Broomstick maybe can really come up clutch for Zuhex.
Yeah, you could actually just go Tour Guide, Freezing Trap, Hero Power, the 1/2, and push it all to face to lock in that card into the Freezing Trap. If he wants to do that, he could go for something a little bit different. Animal Companion, I think, on average, puts the most stats and pressure on board. Leok coming down there, going to push a casual 10 if he wants to.
Yeah, this is also more mana efficient, and like Freezing Trap will most likely have other uses, especially if Zuhex trades, has a Volpentinger, and then he freezes that. Zuhex was just never going to want to play that 3 mana 1/1. So Zuhex picks up Penance, which is nice.
Doesn't quite line up, right?
Yeah, I'm thinking about the trade with the Mind Flayer, then you play the Broomstick,
I wonder.
trade both, and then Raise Dead. and then wait. What if you trade the Mind Flayer, then play Raise Dead, then play the other Mind Flayer, and then Broomstick? How's that work?
Well, let's find out. If he was he's playing Raised Dead, and he was sure he wanted to do something. He had something in mind because that was a guaranteed Raised Dead there for those 2 minions. Does have. I think I do like the penance here. This is pretty clean, but I think I like killing off the Leok, honestly. But it looks like he's going to go for the Volpatinger instead. Because everything's just taking more damage, right? Because he left the Leok up. He lost more minions there, whereas he could have left the Volpatinger up, killed off the Leok, and everything's attack was down. So I'm not 100% sure on that turn. I have to go back and look at it.
Yeah, there was actually some tricky stuff that he could have done. For example, Zuhex could have used Mind Flayer on his opponent's Leok, then played the Broomstick, then Mind Flayer would trade in, summon a Leok, and buff his Broomstick and his Dwarven Sharpshooter to attack. It was definitely like a tricky turn, and
right.
I am very worried for Zuhex now because that Broomstick was like I think the key to stabilize his early game here. It
didn't feel like it did as much as it could have done, but it was definitely a weird turn. It was definitely tricky. It does have the Light Well, which is a bit of a frustration, actually, to deal with. I could instead go for the Shadowy Figure this turn. Yes. It's tough, though, because Zuhex is on 18. He can potentially take a lot this turn. There's not an Apotheosis in sight, which is a little bit scary as well.
I mean, this is a pretty reasonable board for Priest. It's just that there been too much life drained? Because now I think Shadai is like, okay, I'm going to lose the board. Like, forget trying to control the state of the board, right? Like, just push. You can deal 5 more, put him in 11. You have kill command, put him down at 6. And then you have ways to refill your hand. You wouldn't kill command right now. I don't think, even though you have all your beasts committed to the board, I think instead you want your Felmaw develops so you can get the 5 power. But I mean, this is a good spot for Shadai to be in right now, and I feel like Zuhex is just going to be stuck.
Oh, especially with this hand, like, this Spellkin needs to pretty much just get him renew exactly. Maybe Wave of Apathy, but even then the Leok kind of just beats that. So yeah, this is really tough, and I think... I do think that Broom turn probably needs to go back and be looked at a little bit, because I think that could have looked a little bit better and not caused Zuhex to be in this situation right now. He might have still been bad, don't get me wrong, but I think that turn could have been a little bit cleaner. Yeah, this is... I agree with you though, Dan. I think, although if he was just immune for another turn or so, yes, I think Zuhex would win board soon. But soon's not soon enough, is it? I think the damage has already just been done.
Yeah, and for reference, this Leok still isn't dead. And this Leok's done a lot of damage.
Yep.
And Zuhex had the opportunity, I think, to clear, if my memory serves, because of that Mind Flayer Broomstick opportunity, because both of his minions would have had +1 attack.
He 100% could have cleared. He also could have just used the Broom plus Penance to kill the Leok and then traded, done a different trade with the Flyer. There was tons of options. And the problem is, for me, the weird part was the Leok enabled the good trades for Zhao Dai, right? Because Zuhex lost 2 minions trading into Leok buffs, which is very strange. But wow, hang on, is that just the game?
That is death.
That just looks like
any 4 damage.
Oh, 1.
And that's going to do it.
Insane. That's just going to be the series. Zhao Dai takes it, takes the victory, and finishes his Swiss run at an 8-1 score with a very aggressive lineup. Pretty impressive overall, Dan. And honestly, going into this tournament, I thought that the aggressive lineup would do pretty well, and I'm glad at least one player made it with a full aggressive lineup. So it makes me feel a little bit better.
Yeah, that's right. So Shadai had one of the highest tiebreakers, I believe, anyways, for top 8. So that win should guarantee them in, as 8-1 is very much good enough to qualify, because I think we have less than 8 players who are 8-1. There is one player that's also undefeated. So the question becomes, who's like the 7-2 player or players that are able to squeeze into the top 8? But Shadai with his aggressive lineup will be one of them.
Yeah, and I think, like I said, not only was the lineup pretty cool, but I think his play was pretty solid. It looked like he struggled a bit with the Hunter in that specific series, but when you look at how close he got to finishing the game in both of the games he lost, it was pretty huge. But there we go. There's the top cut there for the Swiss. So we have Lightning at 9-0, a fantastic result for him. Zhao Dai 8-1 that we did see. Drivo, Lamy series, Lion there. Not only just good to see Lion performing once again, but also for you, Dan, in the predictions.
All right.
And yeah, it's looking pretty good. Sottle will be upset. I can feel it. But what do you make of this top cut?
Well, it's always great to see consistency from some of our top players. The fact that our world champion is in the top 8 right now, VK Lion at 8-1. She's just a bona fide Hearthstone superstar at this point. She doesn't have to prove it, but she does it again and again, which is great. Both in China and international, right? That's actually been one of the hardest things about, watching China play is that we know they're so capable, but every time for years, every time we saw them compete on the international stage, it seemed like they came a little bit short, despite how much hype that came up. Now it's very common to see China perform consistently, and Lion is spearheading that, and it's just awesome to see her dominate. And then also, we've seen a lot of these players throughout the weekend, Dravo, Frenetic, and whatnot. So it's been quite fun to watch that go down.
Just don't even want to look at this graphic. Abar, take it away. Although you did very well with Lion there, it does look like Sottle, at least for now, is doing pretty well on those 15 points. But Lion is still in, and I believe that's the only play on this board that is still in. So I guess you win that round, Dan, as far as I'm concerned.
So it looks like Derek and myself have tied in second place. Sottle with very solid picks. For people who aren't familiar with what we're doing, we drafted and we went into snake line. So the top row is our first picks. The second row is our second picks. And we all kind of agreed that third would kind of be a one to watch, or kind of a more fun pick.
Especially
Derek picked Bunny Hopper. Yeah, Derek was like, all right, I'll try hard and pick Bunny Hopper. And then he ends up getting 1 point from Bunny, who... Bunny is actually, I think went 7-2, every single Masters tour until today, or this weekend. So I think it was a very reasonable pick. I was actually afraid that Derek would blow everyone out, because I looked at his lineup and was like, wow, he has, some really, really good players. Arguably the best player in each of their region, or, one of the best players in each region.
I will say, Dan, as far as I'm concerned, Lion can still get some wins, right? So I don't think don't think you're out. You've still got time to at
still
worst
got
catch
chance.
up. Yeah. I've got
It would
confidence, but
require Lion to win the whole thing in order to decisively beat Sottle, which I think I wouldn't prefer it any other way. And I don't want to bet against any other player. I was actually shocked to see Lion drop to the second round. I consider that a big steal on the board.
Yeah, it's pretty huge, and honestly, of all people right now, is expecting Lion to take the win that big of a stretch? Not even close, as far as I'm concerned. So, looks pretty solid for me. But that is us done for the Swiss stage. We do have our final day tomorrow, so make sure to tune in at same time, same place. But from Frodo and myself, the other casters and everyone else here, thanks a lot for watching today. We hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Masters Tour Montreal Online is brought to you by T-Mobile. Switch today and rank up to America's largest 5G network. T-Mobile.